Hi, friends. I'm AJ the Joy Weaver, and this is the Oh My Goodness podcast. Today, we are talking about something I wanted to talk about for a long time, but haven't been sure how to talk about it to give you all the information I'd like. And we're going to talk about the book. Oh, okay. So I wrote a book. In case you don't know, you're like, who is she? What is she talking about? I wrote a book and it came out in September 22nd, 2021, called Red Thread: Weaving an Embodied Life of Joy. And I just finished recording the audiobook a month ago-ish, 4 years later, which has also been a journey. But so many people are interested in writing a book, but don't know where to start or how to start. Now, let me say, there are so many resources online now, so many resources on book writing and things like that. So this is just my perspective. I had a publisher, although it was kind of like an in-betweeny publisher, if that makes sense. Not like a full publisher out. I mean, she was, but there's some perks to having a traditional publisher, an indie publisher, or self-publishing, right? So I can only speak of my experience of working with an indie publishing and that time and age that that was. So take what works, leave what doesn't. I will tell you the things that I'm like, if when I were to do this again, which might be happening sooner than I expected, which I am still having feelings about, but we'll talk about all that. So let's get into it. First off, writing a book, for lack of a better word, is a horcrux. You are putting your soul into this book, your heart, your energy, your words, your time. People think writing a book is, I don't know, like fast or something. And I have a friend, Megan Brown, who in the beginning, she warned me and she's like, people think it takes, she's like, this is a 3-year journey. I was like, oh, it'll be fine. It was a 3-year journey. It was spot on. Not everybody will get your book. Not everybody will support you in what you're doing. I'm going to be kind of honest and vulnerable. And there are things I'll mention that you might be like, oh, that seems excessive or that seems, but know that not everybody's in your corner for writing a book or being a part of a book, right? So context. Red Thread: Weaving Embodied Life of Joy. And like, yeah, yeah, no more disclaimers. Let's just get into it. My heart for this book, I have led Red Tents at this point for 10 years of my life. Holy buckets. Wow. Yeah. Yeah, it's been 10 years because the first one was in September. Oh, wow. And when I first discovered Red Tents, I was like, this is amazing. And Red Tents, if you don't know, are sacred spaces for women to gather to talk about things they don't normally talk about, right? This might be orgasm, sex, blood, periods, being a woman, birth control, abortion, rape, like all of the things. Because there's so many times we're just like, it's fine. And we're so often doing, we don't often get a chance to just be and connect and not have to be on. And so red tents are a sober space to come together and breathe. And it's kind of roughly based on the idea of Red Tents by Anita Diamant. And then a bunch of women read that and were like, where were our red tents? And then they took off all around the globe. And there are traditional red tents, lodges, moon lodges, across the world as well. Some are healthy, some are not. There's a lot you can dive into that. We're not touching that today. This is just about the book, but I'm giving context. And so I also ran workshops and worked in schools and after school programs and was a mermaid for years. And so lesson planning as a nonprofit theater for youth major, all that jazz, like I can lesson plan till the dogs come home. Like, hey, you need me to teach about something? Okay, let's break it down. Here's how people learn it. Da, da, da. And so Red Tents was like, oh, okay, we could have a different theme each month to have people dive into and they can learn and kind of like take away. We'll share like this. Like I had a layout that worked really beautifully to help people feel safe and comfortable in sharing things. And as much as you do to create a space, things happen, right? Things hit the fan. People make bold choices. We've had people leave the tents. We've had racism that we've had to deal with. We've had people doing drugs that we've had to deal with. So like there's been different things that we've had to deal with in the tent that we have learned from, right? Me and the other tent keepers is what we called it. And so what was happening is women were leaving our red tent in Germany, and then they were like, there's no red tent where I'm going. I don't know how to start this. I'm like, it's easy. Just get people together, make a lesson, like figure out what you want to do, like, but and they're like, yeah, none of that makes sense. And I'm like, you just do. And it was one of those things. And you might be like, AJ, you sound like a bitch. Well, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you, but I'm sure you have something like this too, where you're like, yeah, it's, like it's hard. Like you just do the thing, right? You could tie your shoes, like, but and they're like, no, I can't tie my shoes. And you're like, what do you mean you can't tie your shoes? But then there's other people that are talking about crocheting. They're like, yeah, you just hook. And I'm like, what? What do you mean you just hook? I don't know how to crochet. So if that's the wrong hook metaphor, don't at me. But that's what I mean, right? Sometimes what's easy for you, you don't realize is actually hard for other people, and vice versa. I can't golf worth a damn basketball. Like there are many things that are not my skill set. Smoking, like the grill smoking. Okay, we don't need to get into it. But all that to say, I would give my scripts and they're like, what do I do with this? I'm like, what do you mean? What do you do? You like read it. You tell people the things. They're like, I don't understand. And so I was like, like I felt stuck on how to help my people to lead things comfortably. And I didn't realize that was a part of it because I had led so many things leading a group. Yeah, like, okay. But that's not true for everyone. So I was like, oh, we need resources. And there was Deanna DeLam, she had written a red tent workbook at the time. And there was like a red tent kind of leader group, sort of. This is giving a lot of backstory, but I think it's helpful. And but that wasn't very active because I was like, hey, here's what I'm doing in my events. What are you guys doing? And then sometimes people would say something, sometimes not. I'm like, why are we gatekeeping? I'm like, can you share? And they're like, well, and I'm like, oh, okay. And so some people would, or they give tips. I'm like, okay, okay. But I was like, we could have so many more things if people had more tools and language. And I realized because then I started opening up my eyes and being like, look with your specialized, my brand. You take off your filter of how you see the world. And then you're like, oh, okay, okay, here's what you need. And so then I started asking people, like, what do you want to know? And they're like, all of it. I'm like, okay, give me specifics. And so they're like, how do you get your people together? How do you tell them about sacred time? How do you tell them we're not drinking tonight? How do you tell them to journal or that we're being vulnerable? And I'm like, okay, and then how do I teach about this subject or how do I pick what subjects to teach? And I was like, oh, this whole world. So I had originally kind of thought, I'll just put together 13 scripts of red tents, make a little workbook. It's good. But as I was talking to my women and my larger community, I was like, oh, this is a whole ass book. We are going to need to, this is a whole thing. This is not just, hey, here's the things, right? So as that started developing, I was like, okay, can I do this? Am I capable of doing this? I guess. I don't even know where to start. At that time, I moved to Mississippi. This is important information. Maybe this is a two-part. I don't know. So I moved to Mississippi. I met Megan Brown and Christian writers. And back then I was evangelical, but I was deconstructing my faith because it was after 2016. I had like come out as bi at that point to like all of my friends, but also the church we were in Germany at one point was like, they were like, the queer people are ruining America and the Democrats are gonna destroy the morals. And I knew because we were friends, there was multiple of us queer folks sitting in that church. Some who worked with kids, me who had just greeted that day, people who came in, somebody else who had helped with food. And we were like, if you knew we were here and we fell under this umbrella that you're now accusing, would you still want us? Would you still want us here? And the answer is no, unless you changed essentially. So none of us kind of like came out of the closet to them. But it was just this really eye-opening and kind of awakening. And like, let the record show too that I am a white girl, straight passing marriage, all this jazz. That like, that's such a privilege too, to like kind of have those realizations of, do I even belong here? And I had kind of started doing that back in college as well when I was in doing burlesque. And my queer friends, I invited them to my church, and one of them was like, I can't go there. And I was like, what do you mean you can't go there? Like, we're gonna have pancakes, it's gonna be go so great. And she's like, no, they cast me out of that church. Like they're because I'm a lesbian, they said I'm not welcome back. Um, and so I'd already been asking lots of questions, and you're on a slippery slope, and like you can't ask that here. And then some people, when I told them about red tents, were like, this is devil worship, or this is a witch circle, or this is a pagan gathering, and who do you think you are? And you can't be a Christian. Jesus needs to be at the center of it. And I was like, you guys don't even understand. Like, red tents are a space for women to come together, period, to share, whether they're Christian or pagan or atheist. I'm like, you haven't even been, you don't even know. And like, if you're listening to this and you've been to a red tent, there's vulnerability. It doesn't matter your faith. It's we're coming together at our core of vulnerable people, sharing our experience and learning from each other. And you grow so much. And in red tent, my faith even expanded as we did meditations, right? And I learned about archetypes, and I had this whole inside world that grew, and it was amazing, and I felt so alive. And I was like, okay, but then I have women struggling in red tent, and they're like, you should bring them to church. And I'm like, that's not the point. The point is that sometimes we just want to be witnessed, not witnessed to. Does that make sense? Like, if they want to talk about Jesus, cool. But also sometimes people just want to hug, and they just want hot tea, and they just want to cry. And that is okay. And I got a lot of lectures for that. I got a lot of pushback for that. Thinking, yeah. And there were people that I invited to Red Tent that I'm like, hey, I think you'd like this, that they're like, I can't be a part of that because um, because my faith won't allow it, or different things. And we had Christians in our tent. I've had Catholics, I've had everything. And everybody's got to walk their own path. But that is context for this next part. So red tent, obviously, means a lot to me and many other women. I am not, what do you say, over exaggerating. And I'm the first to admit I'm an expansive storyteller. But I don't exaggerate really when it comes to red tent, that it has kept people alive, and it has kept people in their marriages. It has helped people out of their marriages. It has walked people through miscarriages. So much, so many things. Red tent has held so many women through so many things. And so I got a scholarship. I told my dream, my desire to She Loves magazine. And they were like, hey, you should write an article for us. You should submit. And I was like, okay. So I submitted this article, and it got published. And my friend, Megan, saw it, and she offered me a scholarship to Speak Up conference in Michigan. And it's a Christian conference. And I was like, okay, we're going. This is going to be great. And so they were like, hey, you need a book proposal. You need all this stuff. I can't remember if I went once or twice. Man, oh, why can't I remember that? I think I only went once. Anyways, okay. So we had just moved to the States, maybe, or after. Okay, my timeline's getting mixed up. Either way, one of these things came first or second. I wrote an ish proposal, like a one-page kind of outline. And I talked to oh, that's right. Okay. I wrote like a one-ish kind of proposal. I had this idea in my head. I was like, okay. And I talked to different publishers, because the thing is, there you could go and you could have sit down meetings with different publishers and get advice, feedback, whatever, and people would get picked up for their books. And so I was like, hey, here's this really cool opportunity. And a lot of people were excited because they're like, hey, like, we need this in the Christian realm world, right? Red tents. And I was like, well, this is for everyone. Hula hoop. And so when I went, people were like, oh, we like your book, but it would need to be a devotional. And I was like, well, that's cool, but that's not my book. And then other people were like, oh, we like your book. This is really needed in the world. I was like, I agree. And they're like, but you can't write about how it's open, or XYZ PDQ. So I heard that a lot. So I was like, okay. And then some other people were like, actually, I really like your book idea. Like, send us some chapters. Like, okay. So I had a couple of people that were interested that way. And it was a really great weekend. I learned a lot from other people, but also got some like pushback on red tents. And there were times that I was like, am I crazy? Am I not seeing this correctly? Like, should I be doing this differently? And then we would gather together in the red tent. And in that time, there's no online red tent yet, but Mississippi, I was starting it up. And so we had like 7 in there, and learning opportunities abound everywhere you go. But that was a really beautiful red tent as well. And friendship growing for people. And I was like, nope, this is exactly what it's supposed to be. And I felt protective of it. I almost said defensive, but that doesn't feel true. I felt defensive of it, but more of protective. Does that make sense? Like, I'm like, if there's things I can do better, my women inside Red Tent have asked and will ask for that. But there's a difference between getting that feedback in Red Tent versus from outside of Red Tent from people who have never been. So then I started writing. And I had read, what was it? The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. And she had this thing about everyone's creative and you can do the project if you're willing to show up for it. So I was like, okay. And then Rachel Hollis was similar time. Okay, I think maybe this was before the Speak Up thing. Carrying on. Rachel Hollis was like, set a goal and then work 1 hour towards that goal every day. And I was like, 1 hour seems like a lot. I could do 30 minutes. And so I was like, okay, I could do this. I could write this book. And I think Rachel Hollis said something like 65,000 words is the length of a book. And I was like, I can do that. Maybe. I don't know. But I can't do that in one day. But I could do 30 minutes every day, Monday through Friday, from 6:30 to 6:30 to 7 a.m. So I'd go work out at the gym, and I'd come home and I'd sit down at my laptop and I'd write for 30 minutes and then I'd turn off my laptop. And sometimes I'd write for longer, but most of the time I would not. I'd just be like 30 minutes done. And what I would do is I just wrote stories. Like, what did I want to write that day? And I just like word vomited everything I could possibly think that I wanted to mention or put in this book. And I did that for 5.5 months, 6 months. I started in November and I ended in March. So I don't know. You do the math. And I think it was like March 11th or March 15th. It was something. It was the middle of March. And every time I finished my word count and I'd look and I'm like, okay, not there yet. And that day I hit 65,000 words. And I stood up and I was like, I wrote a motherfucking book. I wrote a book. I wrote a whole ass book. This is a whole ass book. I wrote a book. I wrote a book. And I ordered it from from Office Depot. And I got it bound, like just like a little spiral bound thing. And I got like a little glossy cover, nothing fancy. And I still have it. It's somewhere. I'll post a picture. It's over there. But I went to Office Depot and I picked it up and they're like, oh, what is this? And I was like, this is my book. And they're like, what? And I was like, I wrote a book. 65,000 words. That's a whole book. It was a book. And I was so excited. And I went and I bought, they're downstairs, but I bought rainbow heart-shaped glasses that I still own to this day and I still wear all of the time. And I bought a rainbow fanny pack and it was my congratulations to me. I have completed a goal. I have written a book. I have written 65,000 words. And that's the story of how I wrote my book. Well, at least the first draft. Brene Brown has a thing where she says shitty first drafts. And that is so true. That is so true. I don't even know if I completely read. I did not even read that first draft. I was just so excited. It sat on the table for a week and I was like, I'm not touching it. I wrote a book. I did the thing. And then if you want the bigger thing, you have to work through the smaller thing, right? A final draft book exists because that first draft exists. A final draft cannot exist before the first draft. And so often people get stuck on the first draft of making it and they write to the final draft that they don't even make their first draft. Did you see what I'm saying? Like they're too nervous of it sucking that they don't start. Y'all, like so much. Maybe half of my first draft made it into the final draft. Story-wise, I still got so much that's just somewhere waiting for a blog or maybe a podcast. I don't know. I haven't looked in a long time, but I just want that to be known that like my first draft was terrible. It didn't make any sense. It's just a bunch of stories and things I wanted to say. Okay, now that's that part, right? We wrote the first draft, 30 minutes, Monday through Friday for 6 months. That was my first draft. I did not have an outline. I did not have a goal. I just was like, I want to teach about these things. And there's different topics that I'm going to teach on. Like I decided at that point that each chapter, no, I hadn't decided that, but I knew I was going to talk about different subjects like curiosity, vulnerability, selfishness, whatever. So I would like riff on different stories I had. Like I talked about the time that an elephant shoved me down a mud hill. That did not get into the book. I couldn't find a good place for it. It is a good story. There's a time Jared got bit by a penguin. That didn't make it into the book. My mermaid life, that did get put in the book. Like different stuff got in and out, right? Okay. So then I'm like, I have a rough draft. And I'm like, now I got to do something with it. And that felt stressful. But luckily, Speak Up came along. That's where it's at. Yep. Speak Up came along. And I learned about book proposals. And I was like, that that would be helpful. And then they're like, and the layout. And then you write the book. And I was like, oh, people do that in the begin. Oh, okay. Well, I already have a first draft, but I've got to, they're like, send me your first chapter. I was like, I think I'm gonna take a minute to like edit some of this, right? Um, ooh, yeah. And so then I took that formatting, and I think I still have it. If anybody's like, I need a proposal document, but you could probably get better ones online. It's just like, what is a book proposal? And I mapped out, what is my book about? What are the different chapters? And then it like came to life, and I was like, oh, okay. And then who's your ICA? Like who's your intentional character audience? Who's your, oh my gosh, what's that person? Character archetype? Ideal customer avatar. There we go. Like who is this book for? And I was like, oh, everybody. And they're like, it's not for everybody. And that's a mistake I see my business owners make, this people, everything is we're like, oh, I want everybody to love me, or I want everybody to be approved. Y'all, as a recovering people pleaser, you can't make everybody happy. There are people who actively dislike me. Like, and also there's things I screwed up, which I understand why they don't like me. But like, also, I'm just saying, even if you do everything great, no, you're not going to win everybody. So just like, put that one down. But they're like, your book is not for everyone. I was like, but there's things for everyone to get out of it. And they're like, yeah, sure, maybe. But if you write for everyone, you're really writing for no one, because you're going to make it so broad. It's not actually specific to the people that you're writing to. They're like, who do you want to read your book? I'm like, yeah, everybody. They're like, AJ, get it through your thick head. And I'm like, okay, okay. And they're like, I want you to picture, who are the 3 people you are writing this for? And one of the people was Gretchen. And Gretchen was one of our Red Tent ladies, and she had moved. And she had asked me, like, hey, do you have any resources? And I was like, sort of, yeah, kind of. And so I was like, oh, I'm writing for her, for somebody who has moved, who has experienced a red tent, who has experienced sacred spaces, but wants to create their own, but isn't sure where to start. And then they're like, cool, who else? And so then I picked 2 other people, people who were like, I don't know about this, but also like something about this is like sparking something in me and I like want it. And then for people who had the abilities and skills, but just wanted a format, just needed like the basic, like they need the prompts, they need the stuff, like they can do it. They just want the extra, the tool to lead the thing, but they've got the impetus. They're like, I'm ready. I got the vision. They just need the extra tool. And so with those 3 women in mind, I wrote to them. And that clarified the way the book wrote, the way the flow was, the chapter layout. And I also had help from my Red Tent ladies, specifically my tent keepers from Germany, on the flow, because they had been in the different tents. And I'm like, okay, I'm teaching about curiosity and creativity and vulnerability and boundaries and wild woman, anger, all these things, body and cycles. There's 13 different chapters in total, because there's 13 different moon cycles in a year. So this way, every new moon, you could have a red tent, you could have a theme, and through the year, you're working through these different things, but they build on each other, right? Because as you grow and you get more tools and more language, right? So they helped originally, some of the stuff was in different places, and they're like, hey, you can't actually teach about curiosity until you have creativity, or maybe it was vice versa. No, because creativity has your inner critic. Yeah. They're like, you can't have curiosity before creativity, because if people haven't addressed their inner critic, they don't have the space to actually listen to curiosity. I was like, oh, that's a really good point. And they're like, you can't have cycles before body, because you have to actually identify that your body is a body, is her, is they, is something, someone that's worthy of being loved and attended to, for you to even comprehend that you have cycles that move your body in different ways and impact you. And I was like, that's a good point. Wild needed to come before anger, but like all these little different things, I was like, oh, okay, that's helpful. So I had that outside input on people who had experience with that. So then once I had my layout of my book proposal, then I started kind of shopping that around. But I was like, they're like, okay, if we accept this, it's going to be 9 month turnaround. I was like, oh my God. I was like, oh, this is a very rough draft. Let me get this together. So then I started going through my first draft, and it was in Google Docs at the time. And it was, I don't know, so many pages on Google Docs, and it was a mess. When I tell you, I like would look at it and I would stare at my screen for 10 minutes and then just walk away, because I was like, I don't even know how to sort on this. Thank God for whoever told me about Scrivener. I don't know who it was. Maybe somebody will speak up, but may they have blessings. May their soup always be warm. And Scrivener is this really cool tool that also allows you to format online books. And the like, you can have notes and you can have like long form, but each chapter kind of has these layers that you can make notes for. You can have long form, and you can have like drafts of it as well, which I think is really handy. And I started going through like, okay, here's my different chapters. What in my first draft even belongs in the book or falls under the umbrella of any of these chapters, right? So that was a lot of sorting. So that took me like 2 weeks, because I didn't edit. In that 6 months when I was writing, I just wrote. I never edited a single thing. I mean, I might have backspace and put a period, but like that's it. So all of this is like riffing, hardcore. So I'm pulling stuff and I'm realizing, I'm like, oh, I've got major gaps. I'm not talking about X, Y, Z, P, D, Q. And then I was like, okay, what else does this book need? And I was like, it needs my people. It needs my women in it. And so I found, not found, but I asked 13 red tent women that were kind of a cross section of different women. We had military and civilians, older and younger, different ethnicities, and as such, and interviewed them about the different themes in the book and about red tent, right? What worked, what didn't, what would they love to see? What would they tell a new person coming in? What's their experience with anger? Ba-da-da. And so I had all these interviews. And so I started pulling them and putting quotes in different sections as well. And then the different themes, I was like, we need to go harder on these different topics. So then one of my strengths finders is input. I love reading. I devour books like a fervor. And so I have so much information in my brain. One of my favorite things is to get information and then like process it and see all the connections to it and then teach it, because I can see the connections. And so it's easy for me to be like, oh, do you understand B plus A equals D because K? And they're like, okay, I didn't before, but now I got it. And so being able to like go back through my books, because I have a library, and like pulling off books and what do you call it? Not toilet papering, not paper towels, the sticky paper, sticky notes. Yeah. Whoever just said that out loud. Good job. Thank you. The sticky notes, I would like go through and mark and be like, okay, like this quote. Okay, I want to mention this. Okay, here's where I learned that. And then also, if you're thinking about writing a book and you're doing it in the way that I did, of like you're teaching something, it's nonfiction. Y'all, if you learn something, write it down, make yourself a Google Doc. If this is one thing I could have done differently, there's a lot of things I could have done differently and would do it next time. I would write down, have a Google folder just for things I learned and where I found them, so that you can actually attribute the things that you say. Because there are things that I wrote down that I attributed to people that were not those people, that like, I was like, oh, this is from this person. And then when I went to actually go look it up, I couldn't find the poem anywhere. And B, I couldn't find that person. Like that person didn't exist. I'm like, where did this come from? I don't know if it was from a book or something else or a quote, like not a clue. So there's some things I couldn't include because I didn't know, or I'd be like, author unknown, or here's where I think I found this. So that's just a tip for if you're thinking about doing that. Okay. So then I organized all of that. And then I had 200,000 words. And I was like, that is a lot of words. And I am a woman of much words, but I don't think anybody wants to read that many words in one go. Maybe they do. I have good thoughts, but that's still a lot. So I was like, okay, we gotta like edit. And that took a hot minute as well. And I'd written the red tents, like all the red tent scripts. And so that right there also ate up a lot of space. But then when it came time to actually editing, here's what I did that I think was super helpful is so once I had everything in the way I wanted, actually, hold on. There was still things missing on different teachings like curiosity or anger or things. And at that point, it had been like a year at this point, and I had gotten my publishing deal with Clear Fork Publishing. And Clear Fork Publishing is indie house, but they were also going through a lot of stuff at the time. And it's not exactly my story to tell, but it's also not private information. So I'm not kind of telling anything that's not findable on the internet, if that makes sense. So I discovered the Zoom, and I discovered the Zoom. Then COVID hit. So I was riffing and doing Zooms on the different topics because I'd like look at my screen and be like, I want to teach about this and I know what I want to say, but I can't type it correctly. So I would Zoom, record, and put it through transcription service, and then I'd have exactly what I want to say. I was like, oh, perfect, because I can say it. Sometimes typing it is like, oh, it gets stuck. And that was really helpful. So I was able to fill things out. So once I had all of that everywhere I wanted, I was like, what are the things I want to cover in each topic? And I was like, I've covered the ground. Great. I've got interviews. I got this. I got that. I got my own thoughts. Then it was editing time. Oh, editing. Dear Lord, I hate editing. I had multiple friends tell me red is love. And I was like, it feels like murder. And they're like, red is love. And I'm like, okay, okay. They're like, do you want your best book to go out in the world? And I was like, yes, ma'am. And they're like, okay. Then like, know that anytime somebody puts red to your words, it's because they want your highest and best as well. And I was like, okay, okay. So I went through and I read as loved my own stuff. And I went through it. And then I'd had Grammarly as well, the Pro edition, which I love. Grammarly's gotten weirder in the last few years, but back then it was really awesome because it was like, hi, you have a run-on sentence 3 paragraphs long, because I just put it out and I was like, oh, let me fix that. Right. And it would be like, you didn't capitalize this or but so that was really helpful to streamline all of that. And then I'd read through on my Google Docs or on my Scrivener, and I'd like have this is my current copy, my old copy, because otherwise it gets to be too much with your different chapters all around. So Scrivener kept me sane to like read through it and like edit, and they have a full screen version so you're not distracted. And I'd edit and be like, okay, okay, that's good. And I read through the others. So once I had my like new edition, I read through everything on my computer. I was like, okay, it's actually got a layout. We've got an introduction. We've got whole ass chapters, and there are other orders, whatever. And I had all the red tents at the end. So then guess where I went? I went to Home Depot, Office Depot. I don't even need to buy anything at Home Depot today. We went to Office Depot. I got another printed version. I got that. And then I spent a week and a half with a red pen of my own going through on paper. Some people do all of their book stuff on the computer. I don't know. I don't know. I can't do that. I can do 90% of it, but I have to have that paper to like look and read. My brain processes it differently. Plus, I'm a note taker when I read books. So for me to be able to read my own book and write notes and be like, oh, I should mention XYZ. Or I'd be reading and I'd be like, wait, why is this after that? That happened 5 pages ago. I can think of it differently in my brain because I'm reading the book in real time. I'm flipping the pages. I'm having that body memory versus I'm clicking into a different tab. Do you see what I'm saying? Like I can literally be like 5 pages. Oh, this needs to be over here. And so, oh man, I'll have to I'll do a video or something. Yeah, because if you see my first, that, hey, it's a real book, Office Depot one, it's got so many red things. So then what I did, once I went through that, I was like, yay. And I spent so much time in the forest because this was full COVID lockdown. I was in the forest almost every day editing. And this was also, I had started to burn out. I was also doing the Joy Guild at the time. I was running 10 red tents a month. Like, it was a lot. It was a lot. It was a lot. It was a lot. And then I'd take all my drafts and I'd have my paper and I'd be on my laptop and I would put in all my edits. And then I would do it again. So I'd put all my edits. And then once I had those edits, I went through Grammarly again, the whole book. Yep. If you're like, oh my God, that's a lot of work. Yep. Yes, it is. And then I think, did I print it out one more time? I think I did. I think I printed it out one more time at Office Depot. And I went through it again with a red pen. And that time I was like, okay, this is getting better. This is better. And then I was like, okay, this is ready for other humans. Here's what I did. And if you're on the YouTube, because this is also, I post the video on YouTube's, you can see this. If you can't, I will try to explain the best way I can. Okay, so I would have chapter 1 that had gone through those 4 edits already with me, right? And I put out a post and I asked for beta readers. I asked for people who are willing to read a chapter of my book. And in things, they would get a mention at the end of my book. And also, like, people like helping people, right? People were very excited to help. And not everybody helps in the same way. Clarity is kindness. And so in the first couple I sent out, I was just like, yeah, just let me know your thoughts. After the second week of that, I was like, okay, here's exactly how I need you to write feedback. Here's exactly the format I need it in. Here's da-da-da-da. Here's what I'm looking for. Because people would just read and they're like, this is great. I'm like, cool. That's literally not helpful. I mean, like, it's helpful, but it's not. Because I needed to know what stood out. Is there anything you felt like was missing? Is there anything that felt like skimmed over? Grammar stuff, things like that. And once I started asking those questions, people were like, oh, it was great. I wish you would have talked about XYZ more. And I was like, oh, yeah. You're right. You're spot on, right? So I would take chapter 1 and I would give it to 2 people. So let's say Bob and Jill. Okay. So chapter 1 goes out to 2 people. This is week 1. Week 2, and I would give them 2 weeks. So week 2, so chapter 1, version 1, well, technically version 4, but version 1 for this. Week 2, chapter 2, version 1, technically version 4, but you're following, goes out to Casey and Lucy. Carl, Bob, there we go. Casey and Lucy, and they've got 2 weeks. Week 3 comes out. And during week 1, I'm prepping week 2, right? While this is out, while chapter 1 is out, I'm prepping chapter 2 and I'm prepping chapter 3. So 1's still out. So week 3, chapter 3, version 1 goes out to Dee and Kristen, right? Okay. And guess what comes back that week? Chapter 1. And so chapter 1 would come back and it would have read from different people. So I'd send out chapter 3 and then be like, okay, chapter 1. And I'd see what was the feedback. And sometimes somebody would go, it would be very red and I'd read through it and be like, oh, I agree with the majority of these things. And then I'd open up somebody else's and they'd have some red, but like maybe not as much, or theirs is more flow. So I'd use number 1's, Kayla's, who gave me the most feedback. And I'd use hers as the new base and I would delete my old version. I mean, I always had like my base version somewhere, but her version is the new version. I'd implement all her edits and then I would go into Carl's and take Carl's feedback and implement it into Kayla's version. I'm screwing up the names, but I think you understand what I'm saying. So once I did that, then guess what I'd run it through? Grammarly. Exactly. Run it through Grammarly, check it out for grammar. And then I would read through it one more time. So that puts it at like 7 edits or something like that. And then I'd send that chapter out now that it's on its like 5th edition of editing, sort of, out to 2 more people. And sometimes people wanted to beta read multiple times. They're like, give me all the things. Sometimes people are like, just 1 chapter, please. So we'll say Lucy and Graham. And guess what? They get 2 more weeks. Cool. So then it's week 4. Guess what's going out week 4? Chapter 4 to 2 other people. Yes, I had a Google Excel spreadsheet for this, and I had a whiteboard. The whiteboard was really helpful in keeping track because it gets confusing. So I was doing week 4. I was also prepping 5, right? Because the future weeks are going to come. But by that time, like they were kind of okay, so it didn't take me that long. And then 2 came back because it had been 2 weeks. So 2 came back, and then from those 2 people, and then I implement their work, check it out, go through Grammarly, I would read it again, and then I'd send it out to 2 more people. So that kept looping through all the way my 13 chapters, but even more because I had my intro chapter, and then I had like red tent chapters at the end of like how to build a red tent, how to create a sustainable red tent, blah, blah, blah. So I had really like 17 chapters total, I guess, maybe ish. I don't know. So after all of that, that took 5 months, 3 months. I don't know. It felt like forever. I cannot tell you how much those beta readers saved me. That was so helpful. The feedback I got from people was exquisite. Oftentimes it was, AJ, you're not going hard enough. Like, tell us the good stuff. Tell us more. Tell us more detail about this. Like, or sometimes people are like, I was there. You're not explaining this well enough. Like, bring them into it. Or other people are like, there's more here. What aren't you saying? Or, hey, like, you're explaining this really good, but I think you really need to mention XYZ. So my beta readers made this book even better. Does that make sense? Like, so don't be afraid to ask your people for help, because this was, if I ever do a book again, which I might, I will be doing this 100% because it made it easier too. Because when you see something 1,000 times, it's the same. You're like, I don't know. It just kind of starts bleeding together. But when you see it through other people's eyes, it makes you see things differently. And remember how I said before that I was like, what, like it's hard? Like, yeah, of course. There's people that were like, what's a taproot? What's an access point? What do you mean by vulnerability? What are layers? And I'm like, what do you mean, what are layers? We talk about this all the time in red tent. They'd never been to a red tent. And I was like, oh yeah, there's people that are going to read my book that have never been in a red tent, or they'd be like, what are levels? And I'm like, levels, but, and they're like, no, I don't know levels. And I was like, oh, this chapter's got to come after that other chapter. Does that make sense? So like people will see the things that you don't, because you don't know what you don't know. Not as like you're better than other people, but just people know things that you don't, and they don't know what you know. And when you're trying to teach, it can be really easy to skip over some of the basics and go straight to some of the stuff you want to teach without realizing you didn't put the floorboards in for the house, right? Okay. So after this was kind of mostly done, or maybe it was kind of in the middle of it. It might have been in the middle of it. I hired Kat Anderson, I think was her last name at the time. I think it's still her last name. Oh my gosh, I owe her so much. I paid her some money, probably not as much as she needed, not as much as she charges now. So good job, you, Kat, if you're listening to this, to be my flow editor, because my publisher was going through some things and I wanted to make sure, and my publisher like looked at chapters too, after it had already gone through 2 rounds. Every chapter went through 2 rounds of the beta readers, right? So like chapter 1 went out twice, and then Grammarly each time, and then me each time, right? So my editor got it at the end of those runs. So she got like the final versions of that. And then she'd still give some tweaks. So Kat was my flow editor. So I was like, hey, don't really check my grammar, but does this kind of make sense? And she was like, hey, I think you need some setup here. And like, also, I think your red tents need to be at the end of each chapter. And I was like, oh, okay. So that's thanks to Kat. Because I was like, maybe not. But she's like, no, do that. So she was really helpful. So flow editor, if you are writing a book, I cannot recommend getting a flow editor more. It's $400, but it's so insanely worth it. Okay, moving on. So after all of this, Pat, Flow, and beta readers, guess who went to Office Depot again? Me. Printed off that book. When I tell you I've printed off my book, I think 5, 8 times. It's printed off that book, filled it with red. And I was like, how do I still have, how? By this time it'd been like a year. I don't even know. Printed off, but the end was coming. It was like March maybe. And I had to turn in my book in July. Yeah. And so I like wrote And I sat and I read my book and I like wrote and read, and then I'd add in my edits. And then what do? Put it through Grammarly. And then I'd like print it out again. Cause like you mess things up, you edit it, right? So then I printed it out again and I'd read through it and I'd be like, okay, oh, I really like this. Or like, okay. And there were times I like wouldn't write anything. I was like, oh, okay, I think we got it, you know. And but like, so when I tell you this book went through like 12 edition, oh, like so many. But that repeat rinse of my own, that was all me. None of that was my publisher. And by me, and just like me organizing it, a lot of that was also other people, right? But that printing it out, I'm so grateful I did, because my publisher looked at most of my chapters and at the end didn't have as much time to go over some of my chapters more intimately, I guess, just because stuff going on. So the way my book looks and the quality of my book was because of the time I put into it. If I had written my proposal first and then done all this stuff, I don't know if I could have done it in the same way. And so I'm really grateful I had that first draft to work from and then do all this editing to then turn it in. Does that make sense? So if you're thinking about writing a book and you're like, okay, good, I got to get my publisher and my proposal before I write, just start writing. Just start writing the book, because that time crunch, I've seen my friends go through it and I'm like, oh God, I would like nothing less. That sounds terrible. I have zero desire to ever do that. So we did that. And then finding a book cover artist was a journey. So if you have a publisher, talk to your publisher about rates and things, and then make sure the contracts are clear with the artists. I really like my artist and my cover, and it was a journey in some different things. So that's where I'm going to leave that at that. But just make sure your contracts are clear, make sure your language is clear, make sure your artist, your publisher are all on the same page. Formatting. This was a misunderstanding, and me and my publisher have talked about it. But I'm still, I feel a little hurt, frustrated by it. And it's something I'm going to be editing for the next edition when I have time, sometime the next 2 years. I was told that I could put footnotes at the bottom of the page. And I have thoughts on thoughts, right? I have thoughts about the words I've already written, as Jen Hatmaker would say. So I was really excited, and I wrote the book, and I took some things out to put in the footnotes, thinking they would be at the bottom of the page. It was June 20th. The book was due in 3 weeks, and we were going through the formatting, and I was like, where are the footnotes? She's like, in the back. And I was like, they're supposed to be at the bottom of the page. And she's like, well, that's not doable. And I was like, what do you mean that's not doable? You told me that was a thing we could do. That was something I loved in other books, because we had a conversation about formatting. And there was not enough time to reformat the book to put those thoughts back in the book in the way that it needed to be, with the schedule of the printing, if I wanted the release date I wanted. And that really sucked. That really sucked. There were some other things that were happening, which also meant I was burned out by that point. I was very excruciatingly burnt out. And the marketing help, there were things I thought I'd have help with that I did not. So, and the publishing, there's some things going on in the publishing industry that made things hard on their side too. But I'm also just being transparent, because I've heard this from big publishers too. My friends who are in the traditional publishing industry, where their publishers say they'll do things and then they don't. So this doesn't just apply to me. This applies to a lot of people, and also self-publishing. Your book is yours. You need a haul ass for that book. Nobody's going to care about that book as much as you do. And I did not have spoons. I did not have spoons to market that book in the way that I wanted. And it's one of my big regrets. And also it was COVID. It was COVID, July 2021. Everything was shut down. And so I hired a launch team person. Everybody has their different experiences. Make sure you're having clear goals and what's doable and possible, because just because somebody says they're great at some things does not mean they're great at other things. And so she helped with things that I really needed her to do. And also there was expectations I had that didn't happen. And that's on me for not communicating and knowing certain things, right? So if you want your person to be following up with the people or commenting in the groups or just different stuff or putting together the emails, like just feel free to interview your people if you're going to have a launch team person on what's actually included and what does that look like? What does support for you look like in that? Are they going to get you podcast episodes? Are they going to get you da, right? I didn't know what I didn't know. And so I'm so grateful I had her help. And I thought other things would also be included that weren't, and that's on me. But it's something I would look at differently in the future. One thing I'm really grateful I did is because I also, by this time, yeah, so July 11th, July 10th, actually, 2021 is when I sent in the final edition to my publisher of like, okay, here you go. Here's the formatting. And there is still some formatting stuff that I didn't really like, or I sent in my notes and I didn't get to like final check it like I would have liked to because of publishing things. And so there were some errors in the book about formatting of quotes and stuff that were not formatted correctly, which is also on my list of the second edition, which won't actually have any edits to it. It's just going to have the formatting fixes that I want. And so that was really frustrating. That was really frustrating to be like, and it's not necessarily anybody's fault. It's just these things happen on occasion, but they could have been fixed if I would have had more time, if some things would have happened differently. So moving forward, I'm going to look at formatting 4 different times, just like I did my book. I'm going to print it out and I'm going to look through it and be like, okay, this needs fixed. Does that make sense? But that's me. Everybody's a little bit different. I'm just telling you what I wish I would have known beforehand, because I didn't know all the formatting stuff. I didn't know about launch teams and graphics and people and all the promo that you got to do for it. I did not realize, and the Amazon stuff and the Goodreads stuff. Yeah. Yeah. And my launch team person took care of that, which I was grateful for. So, I hired a VA to make graphics, which like, I don't know why it didn't occur to me, but I didn't have the spoons for it. So I'm so grateful for my VA at the time who made those. And she was killer. She saved my ass hard during that time. So I would highly recommend making so many graphics you can't even think straight. Oh, and then recommendations. I had to get recommendations from other people. At the start of the book, it's like, hey, who recommends your book? It had not occurred to me to get those when I started writing the book. I thought there was going to be a time in the, I don't know, in the grand scheme of things to ask for those, that I would be told, okay, this is your time to get those things. And I was not. And then I was like, hey, what about XYZ? And she's like, yeah, you don't have those. And I'm like, what? And so I hauled ass and I messaged like 30 people that I knew. And luckily I'm connected through Speak Up in different ways to writers, publishers, authors, cool people doing cool ass shit. And so I sent out emails, and then I sent out to people in my field, like the Red Thread, the Moon Circles, the women like Alexandra Pope and Deanna Lamb and like Lucy Pierce. Oh my God, I almost threw up when I sent that email. And I was like, hi, you know me, because we had talked previously on different stuff where I was like, I love your work, or like, hey, can I use this quote? And they were like, yeah, totally, go for it. I was like, would you be willing to read this? And if you want, recommend it. And so I can write it in the start of my book. And everybody was so generous. I think one person didn't have time and one person just never responded, which is fine. But the love that poured in from my book from people I did not expect to actually respond. And I was like, I'm just going to shoot my shot. I wish I would have sent it to like Jen Hatmaker. There's a few people that I'm like, why didn't I just send it? But I was nervous. And that was so cool to get back. And then I asked Edelette to write my foreword, because she loves back then. And she was the person who told me to write that first article that kind of set all of this stuff off. So I was like, wouldn't this be kind of a cool full circle moment? And she wrote a beautiful, beautiful foreword. And I'm so grateful for that. So just a heads up, if you need forewords or recommendations, don't wait till like a month and a half before your final deadline to ask for those, because sometimes people need more time. Some people need more time. And I wish I would have thought about that. Okay, back to the end. So then when it came to actually launch time, the printer was having issues, and I had told our launch team if they order, they get copies early. People would pre-ordered, and the books didn't come, and the books didn't come, and the books didn't come. And it's the week of my book launch, and there's no books, and there's no books. And we're all panicking, and I'm panicking because I promised these people their books would be here, and there's no books. I haven't touched my book. My book launches in 4 days. 3 days, 2 days, no books. It is the day of my book launch. I've never seen my book. I've seen electronic mock-ups of my book. It is a book launch day with no book, and I am losing my mind because I feel like such a fraud. And I'm like, what? Like, how did this happen? And then I open up my door, and there's my box of books. And it was this weird and interesting moment because I remember looking at it and being like, oh my God, there it is. It's my book launch day, and I have books. And then I remember being like, I'm so glad this process is over. And then I also realized I have been working for 3 years towards this goal, and today is this day, and I don't feel any different. I thought I'd be like, okay, I'm a published author. Like, everything is great in the world now. And I was still like a hot mess express. And by this time, I was 2 months sober. I'd gotten sober in July. The day after I turned in my final book is the day I got sober, or the day I started my recovery process. And so when I tell you I was a shell of a human being on my book launch, I was a shell of a human being. And I was just like, well, I'm glad the books are here. But that was hard. So I don't know if that's just the printing, publishing, like it was just perfect storm of things, or just timeline things of formatting, because there's some stuff with like the book size and stuff with the printer. And then the printer ended up embellishing some money or something and going out and under, and then the books didn't get printed for a long time, and then they were shipping stuff weird. It's been a weird ass journey. So all that to say, not, I almost said keep your expectations low, but you know what? Keep them low. Keep them low. You may think that your book is going to be done in 5 months. It might take 3 years. And what if that's okay? It took me 3 years because it needed to take 3 years. And this next one that I'm probably going to do it. Yeah. It's going to take me a few years. Well, maybe not. I don't know, because I know things now. So we'll see. I might have different things to say on this one. But like, everybody's human. And the world is going through a lot now, and it was then as well. But the publishing industry has changed so much in the last even 4 years that, like, whoa. But whether you do self-publishing, like, just keep your timelines loose if you can. Give yourself some grace. Don't burn out like I did. Oh my gosh, that was a mess. Like, if you can just stay with yourself. Take care of yourself. Be tender and nourishing to yourself as you write your book. Take time. It's okay. Don't rush it. If things aren't clicking, go for a walk. Go talk to friends. Bring in outside help. Like, don't be afraid to ask for help or share about it. But also, like, get your people on your newsletter. Tell people, hype it up. Like, start your hype game early. And also, like, it's a long game. I was like, oh, I didn't make any lists or anything because I didn't have capacity to do good hype. But and that's something I regret, but I'm also like, I didn't have capacity. Yeah. Is that like, I was so not upset, but I was so bummed by my, like, the book is here. And then I literally ghosted the world for like 6 months. I just disappeared from the internet. Maybe almost a year, but essentially 6 months. And I had like a virtual book launch party, I think, and I had an in-person one, which was really beautiful and cool. And that was really special. That was cool. And people like wrote in my book and blessed it and blessed me. I really appreciated that. But like, I'm still selling books. I'm still selling books. Books are still being sold on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and Target. Well, maybe not anymore with the new printer. I don't know. Um, know your contracts. Ask for what you need. Don't be afraid to ask stupid questions and take your time. And like, don't be afraid to edit and keep your drafts. Keep your drafts. I ended up using Scrivener in the end, but then things had to get moved to Google Drive, put it up. But like, I still have the OG drafts on Scrivener, all that jazz. So always have backups. And like, know that also this is a snapshot in time. When I was doing the audiobook, excuse me, when I was doing the audiobook, there were things I read that I was like, that's good stuff. And then there are things that I read that I was like, I would edit this a little differently, or I would say this now. And I gave like little riffs. I'd be like, okay, side note, here's da. And I'd like, here's more context, or here's but. But on the whole, I'm really proud of it. And that book is the effort of me and so many people's work and my publisher's work. And and it might sound like I'm bashing people, and I'm not. We were all doing the best we could with what we had and the crazy situations happening at the time. But it's also just to say, even with traditional publishing, I've seen people go through a lot worse things in traditional publishing than I went through. Have your own back. Have your own back. It is your book. Your book is a lot like a tattoo. It's going to be there for the rest of your life. And it's a snapshot in time. And if something doesn't sit right with you, if somebody wants to edit and make your book something that it's not, say no. Say no. And you might get good money. That's your choice to make. But then let that be a different book. And oh, something else I really wanted to mention. December of 2020, I found out Red Tense was being written by my dream publisher, Womancraft Publishing, which I didn't have the OVs to put in my proposal for because I didn't think they'd want me, which is dumb because they publish so much goodness, but I was too nervous. And my publisher, it worked out great. But they published a book in March 2021 or March, yeah, or something. It was nearby when mine was October, maybe, or before. No, it was March. Anyways, about running red tents. There had been no books written about leading a red tent except for R2 that came out 3 months apart. Weird, right? So I had a full-on panic meltdown in December because I was like, nobody's going to want my book because these ladies, they're actually on top of it. And when I say like they run the Red Tent directory, they're actually on top of it. Like they're amazing. They're doing great work. Liberatory justice, like, oh, all the things, all the things, all the things. And Womancraft Publishing is like the pinnacle of the women gathering world. I was like, everybody's going to want their book. Nobody's going to want my book. I ordered their book because A, supporting local authors, and B, they're amazing and they're doing great work. And I wanted to learn. And their book is night and day to mine. It's so different. It's so different. And I actually even included, I think, yeah, because theirs came out in March. I even included some stuff from their book in my book because I was like, this is a great resource. But I was so nervous about there not being space. My book has done fine, and their book has done fine. I have multiple Brene Brown books on my shelf. I have Glennon Doyle on my book. I have Lavia J. Jones on my book shelf. Like I have people who write about similar topics on my bookshelf because I like those topics. And so often we think, I can't write a book because it's already been written about, or somebody else is already thinking, yep. You know how many different tarot decks are out there? There's already tarot decks. People out there making more. You know how many journals are out there? Planners? People out there making more. Mermaid tales? That's maybe a bad reference. But like cereal, people are constantly making things, but they haven't done theirs yet, right? People have read both their books, and some people are like, I really liked this part in theirs, and I really liked this part in yours. I'm glad I have both. So don't let even finding out something is happening that's just like yours coming out at a very similar time. You're like, oh, don't let it take you out. just be like, okay, I'm keeping my eyes on my paper. Obviously, inspiration was like, this is needed in this time and zone. Like, I need both of you to run your race just in case one of you can't complete, it's gonna get done, right? Sometimes I think that happens, that inspiration's like, who's gonna get it done? Go. So that's all just to share kind of my experience of looking back, that I'm so grateful I wrote it. Sometimes I forget I wrote a book and people are like, you're an author? I was like, oh yeah, I wrote a book, because it feels like a lifetime ago. And as I prepare to write my next one, maybe, I don't know, or a workbook, it's really got me thinking about the different things. But I get asked, what would you do differently? And what do you wish you would have known? And so now I can point them to this podcast episode. Like, hey, take care of yourself. Edit the fuck out of your book, for lack of a better word. Like, edit till you can't think straight. And then have other people look at it. And then edit it again. And then look at it one more time. I hope you make the things that you want to make. If you want to write a book, I hope you write it. Because even if it's just for you, and I thought that over and over again when I was like, and let me tell you, not everybody is for your book. When I chose my title, somebody I love told me that it was a demon title of like Scientology and like Satanists, and like red thread was used in like evil gatherings. So I was like, red thread is actually a theme for so many cultures around the world. The thread of fate, and Arachne's like red thread, but also it's a ritual thing we do in red tent. At the end of tent, we wrap it around our wrists, we claim ourselves. Like, red thread is the tie that brings us together. This is a book that ties it all together, brings people together. Like, there's no other name for it than red thread. Not everybody will like your stuff, not even people you love, and that's okay. It is not for them. My book was for those three women that I had in my mind, and the many women like them. And there have been women and people that I did not expect to read my book, that have loved my book, that have gotten things out of it. I've gotten messages from people that I don't know, that they're like, oh my gosh, this was so helpful. And I'm like, cool. You don't know who your stuff is for, but you won't know until it's out there. So just trust. And when people are like, oh, I don't know. Well, are they writing a book? Have they written a book? Have they done something that you love, that you want to emulate? If not, then maybe your stuff is not for them, and that's okay. Keep your eyes on your paper, my friends. Write the damn thing. Show up for the things you want. Go live your life with joy, because you're the only one living it. You're the only one living it. If people are miserable and got opinions about your stuff or whatever, just like, however you need to just like let that slide off your shoulders. I did not protect myself good enough. And I went to a lot of people for advice and encouragement that I probably shouldn't have back then. And it made me question myself all the time. Poor past me. Like, y'all, she hauled ass. She hauled ass. Good job. Good job. Good job, past AJ. So trust yourself. If you feel the nudge, you feel the nudge for a reason. You don't feel the nudge to maybe like write a math book, do you? Because it's not your nudge. So maybe your nudge is there for a reason, and there's somebody who's waiting to read your book. I kept thinking, if my book helps one person to not make some of the same mistakes I did, or to feel less alone or whatever. And I've achieved that many times over at this point, but like, that's not the point. The point is, I set out to make the road easier, to gathering, to learning to love ourselves, to walk alongside ourselves. And we did that. We did that with this book. And I'm really, really proud of it. Oh, wow. Thank you for listening. If you have any more questions about the book, please let me know. Send me an email to thejoyweaver@gmail.com, or message me on Facebook at thejoyweaver. And I'm excited to, future podcast episodes to dive into all things. If you got other podcast topics, please let me know. I'm grateful for you listening, grateful for you being here, and I hope you have a marvelous day. Bye, friends.